panel discussion بعنوان Data Center New Tech Security Global and Regional Trends. Moderator أو من يدير هذه الندوة Mr. Bart Stewart, MD Principal WB Engineers and Consultants. Panelists أو السادة الحضور Mr. Dimos Kyriacou, COO Deputy CEO Co-founder Wingu Africa Group. Mr. Patrick Christian, Senior Researcher, TeleGeography. Mr. Matt O'Neill, Co-founder 50 Consulting or 50 Consulting. وأخيراً Mr. Nabil Badawy, MG Data and Hybrid Cloud HPE. نرحب بيهم.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Unfortunately, Patrick was not able to join us for the panel today, but I'm excited to be up here with these three guys. We got some good conversation for you. So my name is Bart Stewart. I've been doing data center design and construction for over 20 years. And one thing that we've seen in that time is that the data center market has always been evolving. But we've all seen recently it's been evolving even faster than normal. And that's all, AI and high performance computing driven. So you really can't design your data center like you did the last one. If you do that, your data center is outdated before you even start construction. So we're going to talk a little bit about trends in the market. Keeping an eye on industry trends is really the best way that we can try and stay ahead so that next data center we build is able to support that next generation of technology. Cloud and AI is not just new to the data center world, it's also new to our customers. So Dimos, can you talk a little bit about your experience and how customers' initial requests really don't always align with what they end up needing in the final data center construction?
Good afternoon. Glad to be here. So Wingu operates a number of data centers in, you would say, frontier countries. So we're in Djibouti, we're in Tanzania and Ethiopia. And cloud in these countries is only now evolving. AI is still very, very nascent. It's just still a discussion primarily by the CIOs of many companies. So when customers come to us and ask for a 30 kilowatt deployment for the rack, the first discussion we get, well, we're in shock. I mean, 30, it used to be 3, it used to be 5, it used to be 7. 30 is a huge jump. And when you sit down and discuss with them and say, what do you really want? What is it that you really need? The 30 is not 30. Right. 30 is much less. But yeah, I mean, all this hype about cloud and AI is also affecting some of the thinking customers, or the design that they think they need. But it is evolving.
Yeah, and I think also a lot of times those customers don't appreciate how much extra cost there is with that 30 kilowatts.
Exactly.
And you say, all right, I can give you 30 kilowatts, but do you want to pay for 30 kilowatts? You say, okay.
That is the biggest thing. When you really sit down and design and speak to them, then they realize what is the what are the implications of doing that.
All right. Now, talking about AI in particular, Nabil, can you talk a little bit about the gap between people's aspirations and what they're actually deploying, and really what are the factors of that gap in the EMEA region?
Yeah, if I can discuss the Middle East in specific. So aspirations are high for AI. So actually ChatGPT changed everything, democratized AI for everyone. Everyone understands the importance of AI. But multiple factors impacting the adoption. One of the factors is the gap between executive sponsorship and aspiration and the applicability of their aspiration from IT perspective. So there is gap between expectations and the outcome of the solution. So more education from executive perspective could be helpful for this. A big gap, of course, is data center and facility limitations. So when you're talking AI, it's totally different than how we used to implement data centers. Just in a 4U, for example, you're generating 10 kilowatts of power and 10 kilowatt equivalent of heat. So our data centers are not ready. Of course, another factor that is impacting the Middle East is some political changes and restrictions for GPUs in the Middle East. So it takes a lot of time to get an export license for the accelerators for AI. So these combined factors are limiting the execution of the plans to expand in AI and AI services in the data centers.
Thank you. Demos, back to you. Thinking about the broader region, we were just talking specifically about the Middle East. But can you share some trends about what you're seeing related to the data center market in Africa more broadly?
I mean, Africa at the moment is only about 1% of the world numbers of data centers. And it's quickly growing, absolutely. You're seeing the uptake of cloud is affecting that. So you have, of course, North Africa is very, very different from the rest of Africa. Sub-Saharan Africa, you have 3 or 4 big areas where South Africa, Kenya, and Nigeria for the cloud uptake. And then you have all the other countries that are moving. They're let's say, second-tier markets and third-tier markets. They're growing as well. So there is a definite uptake because of cloud. AI is still, as I said before, nascent. And then what you're seeing now is that data centers were never designed for this. Right. The initial batch of data centers that came out were for low power requirements, and it's all dry cooling. The power wasn't there, so all these things are changing. The new data centers have been redesigned to be able to operate a hybrid type system. So you would be able to use dry and then potentially use liquid, because as you go up in the power consumption, you need water cooling. Without water cooling, there's no way you can reach that. And then again, there's the power issue where Africa has a huge, production is improving, but distribution is a disaster in many countries, unfortunately. And that a lot of investment has to go into that, because you can produce it, but then how do you distribute it or even store it? Yeah. These are the challenges that you're seeing.
That's a great point. Thank you. And then thinking about as that footprint grows, we looked at all the maps yesterday of the undersea cabling. What we haven't talked about is the need to secure all that data, both in all those individual facilities and as it transits around the world. So Matt, can you speak a little bit about the current best practices in encryption and that general data transit security?
Sure. So when you're considering the data, you have the data at rest and data in motion or in transit. And currently right now, best practice is to use sort of a AES-256 encryption to secure the stored data, and then leveraging encrypted disk storage solutions and ensure database encryptions are enabled. However, keep in mind that many folks believe that with quantum computing, the current standard for encryption will probably be broken in the next 5 to 7 years. Some even suggest maybe even less, maybe 3 years. So again, we have to continue to rapidly evolve to face the new challenges with securing our data. Data in transit is also could be an attack point for the adversary, meaning a financially motivated cyber actor or a nation-state actor that is trying to steal the data or at least exploit the data as it's being sent in transit. So having basic protocols like TLS for web communications and obviously using VPNs for any remote connections. And then the key, of course, for all of this is to making sure that you have good key management. So secure the keys routinely and periodically limit access and essentially make sure it's the sort of best practice of the least amount of folks, so least privilege. and then testing and validating for vulnerabilities, because they're, as we see pretty much on a daily basis, new what they call zero-day attacks. So attacks that haven't been previously identified and reported as an indicator of compromise are continuing to grow. So having a good strategy to continue to update for vulnerabilities is critically important.
So I have a question based on what you said, and I didn't prepare you for this question, so I'm going to apologize in advance. But if 256 encryption is at risk in the near future from quantum computing, what comes next?
Well, the good news is there are certain types of encryption that we believe will be resistant to quantum, specifically privacy-preserving technologies like homomorphic encryption, which enables you to do analysis and on data while it remains at risk by essentially using an encrypted version of that data to communicate with each other. And so we'll have to start looking at other types of privacy-preserving technologies in order to try to combat the quantum, the coming quantum challenge.
That is fascinating. All right, thank you, Matt. You know, Nabil, you know, we were talking earlier, and you know, we all know the world of AI is impacting how people are using cloud-based versus in-house services. Can you talk a little bit about how that AI is impacting organizations, how they are consuming their IT services?
So AI solutions or AI services are generating massive revenue opportunities for the company, and time is money. And as we discussed, getting the data center ready is time consuming. So you're losing revenue if you're not introducing the service fast enough. That's why we see higher demand on having a hybrid cloud operating model for AI services. So for example, the training environment to be hosted at the hyperscaler, for example, or a local data center, while the inference is done at customer data center. So it is a mandate, because you need to launch the service faster, and you cannot wait to resolve your limitations. That's why we see adoption is increasing in specific for AI services for a hybrid cloud operating model. That is generating massive opportunity for local service providers in country, because for many countries there is the laws restricting how you consume and how you expose your data. So that's a massive revenue opportunity as well for service providers in country.
Great. Thank you. So Matt, back to you. You know, thinking about this hybrid cloud environment, and it's more data going back and forth. Can you share some of your thoughts and trends and best practices related to securing a hybrid cloud environment?
Sure. This one is somewhat personal to me. So I was with the U.S. Secret Service for 25 years. And if you're not all that familiar with the U.S. Secret Service, in addition to protecting the president and vice president, we have a mandate to protect the financial integrity of the country. And it all originated back to 1865 with the end of the Civil War, where there was 50 to 60% of all the money in circulation was counterfeit. And so Abraham Lincoln, coincidentally on the last day of his life, authorized the creation of the U.S. Secret Service. So we've had this part of our mission forever, well, for as long as the agency's been around. And so for me, I spent most of my 25 years going after cyber actors, financially motivated transnational organized criminal groups that are trying to steal billions of dollars from organizations, victims, and whatnot. But for the last 5 years, before I retired in December, I ran the global cyber operations. And we had this direct challenge of trying to secure both an on-prem legacy solution and migrating to the cloud. Because when we were talking about our on-prem solution, that provided more security, but it was also expensive. You had to have every 3 to 5 years, you had to turn over all the equipment, and you couldn't scale to handle the needs of all of the new data that we were getting from around the world. So one of the challenges in securing both on sort of a hybrid environment is a lack of unified visibility and controls. And you have different data protections and compliance, both in government and in private sector, as it relates to where the data is being held and how the data is being stored. And then with that brings inconsistent security policies, and then which made it harder for us, and not just us, but anybody that has this, this hybrid environment, is to have a more complex identity and access management strategy. And sometimes there are issues in cloud misconfiguration. And the other main challenge that we used to face is it really increases the attack surface of the adversary. Because now you're in multiple places and you're moving data. Again, the challenge of data at risk is always more than data sitting in a state. And then that also brings the third-party risk, which if you've looked at a lot of the large compromises or attacks in the last 20 years, the majority of them have been due to third-party risk. And so trying to develop a unified security framework and then adopting a zero-trust infrastructure architecture and definitely using sort of cloud-native security tools was important to us, in addition to increasing our audits, our compliances, and standards to make sure that neither side, whether it was the on-prem or the cloud environment, were compromised.
Good. Thanks, Matt. So, going back to thinking about the facilities as a whole, and that constant evolution of the data center market, we're always tasked with the challenge of future-proofing our data centers. We don't know what the next thing is going to need. We just know that it's going to be different from what the needs are today. Demos, can you share some future-proofing strategies that you guys have used and found to be successful and in the evolving market?
Yeah, it all starts with the right design. When you're building your data center, obviously you need to be able to have the ability. I mentioned before about the cooling. Cooling is important.
Yeah.
So it will be a bit overkill to start from day one with a more expensive, let's say, water cooling solution or liquid cooling solution. So you would go for dry with the ability to have a hybrid later on. So this is what we look at. Also the being able to increase the power, on the bus bar, to be able to give the ability to increase that from, let's say, 5 to 10 that you are now to 20 or 30, because it is an expensive exercise, being able to do that. You would not invest from day one into such a high power utilization infrastructure. You do that later. Also, the ability to be able to generate some of your own power is important. So, solar, not all data centers are able to do that, but if you do have that ability, it helps in reducing some of your costs, and that's future-proofing some of your energy costs. Yeah.
That's great. So, we have seen a similar trend as far as people choosing to use a water-based system, a hydronic system, because of that potential future capability for liquid cooling. But for a lot of folks, it's still just the future. It's still just a hydronic system I'm putting in today for a future liquid cooling customer. Nabil, can you share some experience that you guys have had doing liquid cooling for actual users?
So the very interesting model, when we talk AI, we consider, or from facility perspective, we treat heat as a curse. But for others, heat is a blessing, okay? So one of the great models that we have done, but that was in the States actually, for Department of Energy, utilizing direct liquid cooling and recycling the heat generated from the direct liquid cooling to serve the facilities for the renewable energy national laboratory for renewable energy. So it's not a curse anymore. So you're reutilizing the heat generated from the data center to power other facilities. That was, and it has been running actually for years now in the US. We have made similar cases in Norway. in the Middle East, we have signed the agreement for the first direct liquid cooling service provider in the United Arab Emirates with the Khazna data center, and they are participating here with us in Cairo ICT. So that is, it is a massive business opportunity for service providers. If the need for AI is there, but the facilities are not ready, that's a massive business opportunity for service provider. So that is the first direct liquid cooling in the Middle East region for a service provider, where the components inside the IT components itself are being directly liquid cooled, rather than cooling the complete air surrounding the equipment. So that's one of the kind inside the Middle East, and we are proud of such a project. We hope to take it to the next level of reutilizing the energy, but that all depends on the scale.
Yeah, being able to use the waste heat is an exciting opportunity. You know, it's been talked about over the last day or two, how much power is going to be used by data centers in the world over the next 10, 20 years. And being able to take that heat that we're pulling out of these facilities and use it to heat a greenhouse, use it to heat a hospital. Those are all huge opportunities. So we're not taking that heat, dumping it out into the atmosphere, and then that hospital still has to run a boiler. So being able to take that energy, use it once here, and then use it again over here, is a really exciting opportunity. Yeah. Matt, you were talking a little bit about encryption and the zero trust architecture. Thinking about AI and large language models and the fact that you're dealing with people who have their own passwords and write it down on a thing, or it's their last name. Can you share a little bit about how AI is creating additional security challenges and really any other opportunities associated with that?
Sure. So the one thing I can tell you about cyber criminals is they're lazy. They will do whatever they can do to automate processes. And so the easy access to AI and ML tools has made their job even easier. It's also lowered the bar for bad actors to get into the market. Back about 15 years ago, you probably needed to have some sort of computer science degree. You had to have some way in order to leverage attacks, but now you don't have to. You can just simply use a Gen AI to write a specific code to try to defeat whatever you're going against. So that poses massive problems. But we look at AI as more of a sword and a shield, because there are positives along with the challenges. So some of the positives include things like enhanced threat detection, so they can analyze large amounts of data very quickly, and then taking that analyzation of the data and then building out better models for machine learning, so to help protect the infrastructure of the organization. They also can automate incident response, and we've seen that in a few incidents in the last few months where organizations that were more forward-leaning and adopting AI were able to protect their infrastructure from zero-day attacks because they had AI actively looking and monitoring. And there's many vendors that are starting to provide this technology. It also provides interesting analytics on predictive analysis and, interestingly, on behavioral analysis, because a lot of organizations often overlook the insider threat. And so having AI specifically developed and looked to understand and monitor your users for unusual activity is important. And but some of the challenges, I don't know if you guys saw, but in February, I believe, there was a financial institution in Hong Kong that lost $25 million on a deepfake. So deepfakes, whether it is voice or whether it is facial recognition, have been exploited to steal millions of dollars from businesses and financial institutions around the world. And really the only way to combat that is to leverage AI to challenge those attacks. I could take about 15 seconds of your speech and create a language model that would be in real time, be able to answer questions and to defeat whether it's a voice password. Some institutions use your voice as your password. That is completely corrupted. And many instances using facial recognition is also completely corrupted. Then also the other challenges is when you try to bring AI into an organization in which the organization has not been specifically trained and it hasn't been implemented properly, you could create a whole bunch of other problematic scenarios for your organization. Also, the use of free AI tools can create intellectual property challenges for your organization. Then some organizations become overly reliant on AI. And so I think in the future you're going to see a nice model where AI is being used to scale operations where you can't get enough human capital or to handle those problems. So areas where you need, for example, in insurance and in the financial sector and in public safety and in health, I think you're going to start to see more AI that is created from subject matter experts, and to ensure that the model doesn't have, whether it's hallucinations, and that they're also being used ethically and responsibly for the organization. So just a quick example, there's a company out of South Africa that creates AI based on the learnings of subject matter experts. So for example, in public safety, they had thousands of cold cases that they couldn't solve and they didn't have enough people to go through it. So they trained an AI tool based on 25 or 30 of the top detectives on the continent. And then they ingested all of the data from that into that model, and they were able to solve several hundred cases immediately because there wasn't enough people to go through it. And then therefore it helps with public safety. In health, same sort of idea. There was a country that had thousands of beds of people waiting to be seen by primary care physicians. And so they trained models to look at symptoms and diagnoses and past histories to quickly provide primary and second opinions as to what most likely is the ailment affecting the person. So in my view, those are going to be the benefits to humanity when it comes to AI, and it's nice to see that it's actually evolving out of organizations here in Africa.
Awesome. Now, I think we're running low on time. Demos, I wanted to jump back in our last question to something that you touched on earlier. We've talked about how the data center kind of capitals of the world are running out of power already. So data centers are starting to migrate away from those areas. Just thinking about Northern Virginia as a specific example, that whole market's now moving down into Central and Southern Virginia, where there's more available power. Same thing in Europe, it's been moving south out of those Northern European countries. But you also mentioned challenges in Africa, which we all know is a good growth opportunity of the generation, of the distribution. So with all of those in mind, what comes to my mind is on-site power generation. Is that something that you see as a growing trend and something that's going to continue in the market?
We don't really see the on-site, to the scale that you would need for AI or you can produce some energy from solar, but it's not enough to drive a data center. That's fully. It's good for some of the functions, but not for that. It's not like in the US where you have mini nuclear stations to drive the Google.
We don't. That's the goal.
Well, that's
the
plan. Yeah,
but that's a good point. You need like acres and acres of solar fields to try and power.
Exactly, and not only that, you need to store it somewhere.
Yeah,
that's the thing. But going back to what you said, the trend now, at least anyway, in Europe, you had, Ireland, you had Amsterdam, you had London, the major sort of like data center hubs, which are running out of power. And that is going further south. You have Portugal, you have Greece, you have a couple of other countries that have invested in renewable energy and able to absorb some of those needs. And the way I'm seeing it, it's going to move further south. Of course, you do have some challenges, as you said before, producing enough power. North Africa does have energy. They have oil and other ways to produce it. Further south, you have more hydro, you have solar, you have all that. They're ramping it up. Again, it's a distribution. That'll be a problem. But I would see in the future as, you can draw a parallel with, let's say, factories in Asia that were in China. They moved to Vietnam, they moved to other places because of capacity issues. I would see data center needs being pushed further south into, Africa at some point.
I think that makes a lot of sense, because if your only solution is to put a bunch of diesel generators in and run those all the time, that's not a good solution for anybody.
And then again, you've got other things, infrastructure issues such as connectivity, which all these little bits of the puzzle need to come together in order to do that. And I think we are getting there. You are seeing more and more investment in not only subsea. I mean, if you looked at when we first started in Djibouti, there were like 4 or 5 cable systems. Now there's 12. I mean, Egypt is a major hub. All the cables go through here. So there is an evolution. There are subsea cables. The problem was they would go up to a point and then they could not go inland. So now there's more and more networks. Liquid or Cassava, part of the Cassava group, has invested heavily in infrastructure throughout Africa. So you need the connectivity, you need the power, you need the regulations, and you also need the people who are trained to do all that. So little bits that need to be aligned.
All right, well, thank you. So thank you to all of you guys. Great to be up here with the panel of experts. Any questions in the audience about what we have talked about? All right, thanks everybody.